Europe has finally woken up to Israeli genocide in Gaza. In a major sign of revolt, 4 European countries have finally taken some tangible action to denounce a genocidal and apartheid settler colony called Israel. Yesterday, we saw Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Slovenia formally boycotting Eurovision after its organizer refused to ban the settler colony, which has murdered hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians in the biggest Holocaust in our living memory.
Let's talk to the editor of Tribune magazine, Carl Hansen. Carl, what do you make of this? Is Eurovision doomed now?
Well, it's a disgraceful decision. Israel's committed in Gaza what the UN and most international organisations say is a genocide. So, of course, it should be banned. And it's worth remembering that Russia was banned almost immediately following its invasion of Ukraine. So it's really no surprise that this shameful double standard has brought Eurovision into disrepute.
In fact, what has angered these countries is the dubious and unscrupulous behavior of the Eurovision organizers to make sure that Israel is not banned despite causing the biggest Holocaust in Gaza for centuries. The organizer had first agreed to hold a ballot which would have allowed member countries to vote on Israel's participation. Fearing that this would formally lead to the exclusion of the genocidal settler colony, the organizer then decided to drop that idea altogether and instead came up with some nonsensical changes, hoping that this would placate the disgruntled members. But Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Slovenia were too smart to accept this nonsense and decided to leave the song contest altogether. I'm told many more countries are expected to announce their boycott in days and weeks to come. This Sky News broadcast explains what went on behind the scenes and how members were not allowed to vote on Israel's future.
The big meeting that they had yesterday in Geneva, which is their headquarters with various sort of host countries, was the first opportunity that these countries had had to really sort of air their views and vocalise what their concerns were. But crucially, they weren't being allowed to vote on whether or not Israel should be included. What they were being allowed to vote on was these rule changes that are being introduced, which in a way are kind of linked to Israel, but without mentioning Israel, because there had been claims after the last contest that Israel was sort of, they just swept the public vote and came in second to, and a lot of people, there was a huge backlash that it didn't seem right that they'd sort of swept with such a huge amount of votes. And then there was various sort of allegations that the government agencies had sort of paid for extra advertising funding. So the rules that they were voting on were to do with governments taking a step back and not in any way sort of being involved in advertising. But that being said, a lot of people went into that meeting saying we want to actually vote on the thing that we have concerns about, the inclusion of Israel. The insiders that I had on that meeting said it was incredibly tense, atmosphere in there, we're just putting it politely. 11 countries actually didn't vote, we're told, in favour of these rule changes because they wanted the actual vote on whether or not Israel should take part.
What's disgusting is the stand taken by Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey. Only a few weeks ago, he had opposed the ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv hooligans, equating it with anti-Semitism. Today, he was one of the first politicians from a major British party to fiercely support the genocidal entity's participation in Eurovision. I hope people who voted for him or his party will have a sound sleep tonight.
I don't think banning Israel from the Eurovision Song Contest is going to help in Gaza or get the Israeli government to lift their blockade. You know, frankly, I would rather see, now we've recognised Palestine, an invitation to Palestine to come and join. That's the way to bring people together. There is a ceasefire in Gaza, and I think therefore this action is the wrong thing.
But not all politicians lack moral compass. Watch this former Labour MP Chris Williamson destroy the Talk TV presenter Peter Cardwell. The pro-Zionist chap was so frustrated that he had to abruptly end this interview.
This is just nonsense. This is you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. That is an anti-Semitic position.
Well, that's nonsense. Of course, it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism whatsoever.
It's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Okay.
Many Jewish people take the same view. But what is wrong with saying that we want a unitary state that has equal rights for all its citizens, a de-Zionized unitary state?
A de-Zionized, so you're against Zionism in general?
Well, Zionism absolutely is a racist, genocidal, settler colonial
That's absolute nonsense, Chris. Sorry, that's absolute nonsense. I'm not letting you get away with that. No, that's nonsense. It is not nonsense to be a Zionist, to say that Israel has a right to exist.
Peter, we're talking over each other, and nobody can hear if we keep.
Well, that's because you're talking nonsense, and you need to be talked over.
Well, so you're going to talk over me because you disagree with my point of view.
Well, because you're factually wrong.
The truth is, billions of people, not just millions, billions of people agree with me, Peter, around the world, and not you. People are absolutely.
Doesn't mean they're right.
By the look, people are sickened by what they've seen Israel doing over the last.
Okay. Well, I mean,
and of course, they've been guilty of massacres and discrimination. And
would you then argue that? Okay, Chris, would you then argue that Hamas are a terrorist organisation guilty of massacres?
Well, they're designated as.
Do you believe they're terrorists?
Politicians.
Do you believe they're terrorists?
Well, international law is very clear.
Do you believe they're terrorists?
People
do you believe Hamas are terrorists? I don't care about international law. I care about what you think.
Peter, please calm down. International law stipulates that occupied peoples have an absolute right to armed resistance, to resist their occupiers, and that's what the resistance.
Chris, are Hamas terrorists? Yes or no?
But the entirety of the
right. Goodbye, Chris. Goodbye. Thank you very much. That's Chris Williamson there, who has failed to condemn Hamas and failed to say that they're terrorists. They're absolutely terrorists. They are 100% a terrorist organisation, and I've had enough of Chris Williamson.
Why don't we have more people like Chris Williamson and less like Ed Davey in Parliament? Why is it difficult to understand that it's okay to ban Russia, but not so kosher to apply the same rule on a truly apartheid and genocidal settler colony, led by a bunch of sick psychopaths and war criminals? Marina Purkis makes this argument so eloquently on the Jeremy Vine show on Channel 5 here.
I actually can't believe this is even a discussion. If Russia is banned, then why isn't Israel? Israel, war crime after war crime, genocide, ongoing, ceasefire that is violated every day.
I forget you nod when Marina says
Two children were just killed in a ceasefire. There was a community note on X, which should never, it just shows you the extent of the war crimes. Community note, it was the Israeli Defense Forces, I think they put out something saying 2 suspects were eliminated for crossing a line. And the suspects were like an 8 and 11-year-old boy crossing an imaginary line.
Yeah, well, just add to that, there was some dodgy activity at the last Eurovision contest, which meant that Israel finished second. And so now they're trying to put safeguards in place to stop them from, tampering with the results. So, all in all, this is just pretty dodgy.
But the thing is that we're going to talk about Germany and the visit of the German president or whatever it is. Now, because of their history, they're backing Israel being in. Mm-hmm. So you've got countries like Ireland saying, get them out. I just don't see how you sort it, actually.
No, you just
I don't think it's solvable.
That's it.
You just
they
ban
be
them.
Involved, yeah.
No, but because I think you won't have Germany won't be involved.
Well, then bad luck, Germany. Bad luck.
We can live without
Germany, fine.
Germany involved.
You could also say you could do a technicality. You say we looked at the map. Israel's not in Europe.
Literally not in Europe.
Yeah, but then Australia.
I don't think that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it, they did it with Russia. They should do it with Israel on the same basis. And if Germany feels so guilty, they have to also withdraw. Go for it.
Not that we need to look for evidence about the danger posed by an apartheid regime. But if you're still not convinced, then listen to this caller of South African origin on LBC Radio.
I'm a South African, and I would like to really share that boycotts, the question is always asked, do boycotts work? And these cultural boycotts, sports boycotts, etc. I grew up under apartheid, and we were boycotted as a country, rightly so. Boycotts worked. Every one of us growing up in South Africa knew that we were not accepted as a country, not as individuals, but as a country, because our laws and our actions were unacceptable from a global perspective.
Look, you can't flipping hide behind the much maligned logic of anti-Semitism if you decide to make it a habit to support the genocide of Palestinians. I'm afraid people like us would call out your bigotry, savagery, and barbarism. You cease to be a civilized person if you continue to support Israel and his genocidal maniacs. It's as simple as that. Watch this small clip which someone produced a while ago, capturing pretty much everything about the Western hypocrisy and Israeli design to use Eurovision to whitewash its crimes against humanity.
Despite the fact that Israel stands accused of committing genocide in Gaza, having killed 25,000 Palestinians, including 10,000 children in the last few months, Eurovision said, hey, it's no big deal. Israel can still participate in Eurovision because this is a competition for broadcasters, not for governments. Interestingly, that's not how Eurovision treated Russia, who was banned almost immediately after the invasion of Ukraine. But now Eurovision is going out of its way to separate the Israeli broadcaster from their government. Eurovision reckons the broadcaster has nothing to do with the genocide, even though the Israeli national competition, the contest which decides who Israel is going to send to Eurovision this year, has included military propaganda. They also posted a song about annihilating Gaza and its people that naturally has been described as genocidal. Well, gee, that all sounds terrible, but hey, it's not like they're going to bring any of that propaganda to Eurovision, right? Well, when Israel hosted Eurovision in 2019, they erased any mention of Palestinians, made it impossible for Palestinians to attend the competition, fined a contestant for holding up a Palestinian flag, and showcased illegally occupied Palestinian territories as belonging to Israel. And they weren't even subtle about the fact they were using Eurovision to improve Israel's international image.
I know just what you heard, that it's a land of war and occupation.
But we have so much more than that. You'll see the prices, you'll say, what?
It's all of that we see.
And all of the European broadcasters were complicit in this settler colonial propaganda. The BBC, RAI, Rutterslo, everyone, and not just in Europe, all over the world, even though the rules state that you cannot instrumentalize or politicize the contest. But Eurovision has always been a great way for countries to brand themselves and gloss over their crimes. Israel, as a settler colonial project, as an apartheid state, needs the moral and material support of the West, and they have to continually lobby for that support. They need countries like the UK to support their violence, and we won't mind sending them more bombs to kill civilians and bury children under the rubble as long as we can see how cute and progressive and fun they are. Even if by some miracle Israel doesn't use Eurovision to explicitly push further propaganda, given the banning of Russia a few years back, Israel's very presence at Eurovision becomes a message to the world that we are totally fine and okay with the murder of 25,000 people and counting.
The demons from the Israeli genocidal gang are continuing to commit unspeakable brutalities against those fighting to get their stolen land back. We just heard how Israeli terrorists from the terror outfit IDF broke the ribs and teeth of Marwan Barghouti in their concentration camps. This is the level of their brutality. This is Israeli Knesset member Ofer Kashif.
Hello, dear friends. I'm sending you this video as a matter of urgency. I just got terrible news about the situation of Marwan Barghouti in the Israeli prison. He's been severely tortured and beaten. They broke his ribs, his fingers and his teeth. Part of his ear was cut, and I'm really worried about his life. Please do whatever you can in order to stop this ordeal he's been going through. Marwan must be released. First and foremost, for his own life. Secondly, because as we all know, he's a leader. He can lead the Palestinian people and the whole area to good future. Please assist us in that. Thank you.
In case you don't know, 66-year-old Marwan Barghouti is called the Nelson Mandela of Palestine. And people like Ed Davey and his Zionist friends in UK politics and media defend this very action of the settler colony. I sincerely hope history is not going to be kind to these lunatics. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.